We are recording, so Laura, please go ahead.
Cool. Welcome everybody. Excited to have those for the first time or coming back from our last conversation. I am here with two of my absolute favorite people, my teachers, Kay Cordell-Whitaker, who is a grandmother. I'm going to read this. In the ancient energy healing tradition of Katasi, she's a Kalakanasia, a seer, a healer, a weaver of webs of balance. She is also one of our teachers of the Egyptian mystery teachings, the author of The Reluctant Shaman and Sacred Link, two amazing books that led me to her. But more importantly for today's conversation, Kay is the developer of the Red Door healing, of the Red Door, the Katasi Red Door bowls and the Red Door healing training. Also here today is Kay's husband, my other teacher, another Kalakanasia who has trained with Kay for what, 25 years or more?
A little more.
A little more. I'm excited to have him here. In today's lecture, that sounds so serious. Today's fun is, the title is The Quantum Physics Effect in the Red Door Healing Work and the Ancient Energy Healing Arts, the Healing Technologies of the Future. Being a student of both, I'm really, really excited for this conversation today. But before we talk about all the good stuff, before I let Kay's conversation begin, in which we will have questions at the end. So if questions come up as we're having this conversation, there is a feature in this webinar called Q&A. So you can go ahead and type your questions in and we'll get to them to the end. And if you're coming back if you participated in the last call and you had questions based off of that subject, don't hesitate to ask them today. We'll get to those too. You've had a few days to think about this stuff and it is very juicy. So here's our disclaimer, the Katasi and the Katasi Red Door disclaimer. The healing work and the teachings that we offer and that you are receiving stem from ancient spiritual healing traditions and are not intended for medical or psychological service in the allopathic sense of the term. We do not make any medical claims. The ideas, information, procedures, and suggestions we provide are based on those ancient spiritual traditions and healing traditions and are not intended to substitute for consulting with a medical professional. Kay, Helmut, or anyone else working with them shall not be liable or responsible for any loss or damage allegedly arising from anything we provide. Or the healing work and teachings our healing works and teachings are rendered with the contents of ancient traditions they are based on. Everyone receiving healing works or teaching from us is wholly and entirely responsible for their own health and healthcare. All right, seriousness aside, fun. All right, Kay, I'm just gonna let you take it from there.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So, quantum physics, and what on earth does that have to do with ancient spiritual healing traditions and this Red Door healing work, which is a type of radionics work? Well, it has everything to do with it. It's how it makes it work. So we'll talk about, I think from the beginning of that conversation, what is the quantum physics that is relevant here. And this is mostly about what they call in the quantum physics world the freaky or weird at a distance effects. This is the part of quantum science that just doesn't obey any of the laws of space or time. Everything that happens in that quantum level of our existence is working both inside 3D time space, our linear world that we are familiar with, and outside. And outside, that means nothing of space and time. None of those rules govern what goes on with these energies and the material effects. So in quantum physics, we're looking at 3D time space. We have a bowl. I don't have one sitting right here. I've got some behind me. Laura's got one that she can turn a little bit here and there. It's working. It's got stuff in there that's broadcasting to something right now. I believe that's the barn, if I'm not mistaken. Working on the barn.
Yes, this is my barn bowl. I label my bowls, but this one is specifically for the barn.
It's got a lot of chickies, lots and lots of chickens. So this this three-dimensional physical object, it has mass, it takes up space, it has shape, it has dimensions, it has geometry. And that geometry is very, very specific. In our modern culture, we don't think much about geometry. It's something that you learn about so that if you wanted to build a building, you could build one that stayed upright. And you could walk on the floors and they wouldn't fall through and stuff like that. But geometry creates energetic effects. It creates energy waves, many different types of energy waves. It creates a flow of electrons, and it creates flows of other types of energy, which in the healing world is often referred to as subtle energies. And this is where 3D time space begins to meet the nonlinear non-space, the void, the part of existence that everything else in 3D time space springs out of and then returns back into and disappears, disintegrates. And the ancients talk about this. The ancient Egyptians have some really beautiful stories about this phenomenon of things physical, 3D matter, being born from the potential, from the void, from, they would say, Oset Kebt, or a more modern term would be Isis, Black Isis, Isis Oset. And that's the void, that's subspace. That's the place where this new idea about free energy comes from. This is the spot where it fills the entire universe. Everything that doesn't have any matter in it has this this pre-matter place. We don't have the right words for it. We have to use 3D time space words to try to describe this. So I'll do the best I can without sounding too confusing, I hope. So between every subatomic particle is this space that doesn't have any matter in it. It has energy in it. Science knows that it has energy in it. And they know that it's quirky. Quantum physics, quantum science looks at this space and its qualities, and they do all kinds of tests that they get very odd outcomes. in trying to test that space. And that's the same space that's out in the universe between stars and hunks of rock and other things. It's the pure vacuum between the material things, between atoms. So it's everywhere. It's inside us because it's between subatomic particles and probably inside subatomic particles as well. And it's out in space. It's everywhere. It is the beginning and it is the end. That's the way the ancients have described it, and primitive people have described it, often described as deities, more often as a goddess than a male god. Not that it has particular sex, but this is where everything is birthed. So that's why it has that female nature about it, what we would think of as female and birthing. So in this void, in this very female, this is what the Egyptians, as well as the Hindus, and the shamans of Tibet, they call this space the yoni of the universe, and it is everywhere. It is, I mean, it's everywhere. This is the birthing place and the place where everything goes to die. So in this great birthing place, which exists everywhere, we discover that thought, in quantum physics, thought, beliefs, feelings, emotions that people are having during either just before or during the test time changes the outcome of the test. It changes the results. They're testing this space that is supposed to be absolutely nothing, but what they would call a kind of static energy, scalar energy. It's not quite on the surface. It's not an electrical flow. These are all standing waves. And that means they stand in place and they are vibrating, they're gyrating, but they aren't going anywhere. They're not flowing anywhere. And with standard science, standard electricity, you can't access them. But they know that they're there. So with these experiments that we've been doing, and even with those, I don't know what the words are, the names of these places, but the great big giant circle structures where they send electrons and other atomic particles out and around this giant tunnel, and they bang into each other at the end of the tunnel. One end, they start over here and they bang into each other, and they fracture and they do all kinds of weird stuff, and they tell scientists a whole lot about what those materials are and aren't. And they've been discovering that people's thoughts and their feelings and their super colliders. Thank you very much, Jennifer. That's what they're called, the super colliders. They tell the scientists a lot about these material things, but they discovered that they're telling them a lot about non-material things, and the thoughts and the beliefs of the people around them, of setting up the experiment, watching the experiment, especially while it's going on. They affect the results. They change the results. I want you to think about that for just a second. That's rather astounding. What does that mean? And what can we do with that? Well, the ancients have known about this for forever, for as long as we've been around as humans. The way the bowl works, the way this this whole energy thing happens with this in-between space, this void, yoni space, is the same thing that happens when we do energy healings. We're creating scalar waves. And scalar waves are created by a number of different kinds of frequencies and energies, electromagnetic energy, subtle energies, all working together. Sometimes it's subtle energy by itself, but they're moving and they're coming together inside the body, maybe inside the person that is the recipient of the healing as well, and in between the two. And all of these different energies coming together, moving together in just the right way creates the scalar wave. This is a wave that inside the bowl, very, very, very tiny, but it's spiraling. All these different energies are refracting off the inside wall of that bowl. They come to the center. With that refraction, they start spinning. And inside that spiral is a scalar wave. This is so that we are tuning into what sometimes scientists are calling subspace, which is that space between everything that is completely empty except for this standing wave energy. And we can utilize that, we can control it, we can aim it with our thoughts and our feelings and our beliefs and our intent. So we're doing that as humans. We don't even know we're doing it. You don't have to be trained, because we're doing it on a certain level, a certain intensity level, all the time, from the minute we're born to the minute we die. Every time we think, every time we have emotions, we have the beliefs that we're dragging around with us, and old stuff and junk, emotional, mental things we're dragging. That this is what we call in Kadasi our masks. It's programming. All of that. It's sending out energies. It's interacting with other energies. It creates scalar waves. And whatever it is we're thinking about, or whoever, or wherever we're thinking, feeling this stuff, that energy is immediately going to that place. This very special scalar wave is taking the information and the energies, and it connects to whatever we're thinking and feeling about. So we're sending all those thoughts, whether they're good and lovely and sweet, or they're nasty and gnarly and angry, they're going to whoever, whatever, wherever you're thinking about. And all that energy, all that quality of energy, the anger and the fear and the nastiness, that is all being sent instantaneously on the scalar wave. Now, this in-between space, the subspace, the yoni space, it's out of the rules of time and space. It doesn't obey any of those things. We can send information instantaneously to the other side of the planet. We can send information instantaneously to a spaceship that we've sent going to the moon, or that's sitting on the moon. And they did experiments doing that. Nobody talks much about that, but there were some radionics experiments that were done, and they are instantaneous. The exchange of this information and energy does not have to worry about space, how far away things are, doesn't have to worry about time. It all happens instantaneously. And this is what they call the quirky aspects, quirky quantum effects, spooky quantum effects. Several different names. You can look them up, Google them. They've had some really bizarre things in some of these experiments that turn up. And they don't know what to think of it. They don't have any model yet that explains why this stuff happens and why it's working outside of time and space. But we do that purposefully and intentionally when we're trying to do an energetic healing in the ancient way, using our thoughts, our focus, our body, our energy, and focusing very purposefully, intentionally to the recipient who we're trying to give a healing to. And they can be anywhere. They can be China. They can be sitting in the same room. And it doesn't matter. It all happens instantaneously. The bowl, same thing. That scalar wave inside the bowl picks up all that information and all that intent and sends it to the intended recipient. It doesn't matter how far away, everything happens instantaneously. And with the red door bowl, it just continues to broadcast whatever the information is that's intended. As long as it's in the bowl and it's intended, what we call the witness is in there. The witness is something that identifies who or what your target is going to be. Who's going to be at the end of that scalar wave as the recipient. So as long as all of that is in there, it just works and it keeps working. Doesn't stop, which can be really convenient. When we're doing the energy healings, the ancient way, we're concentrating very, very specifically, very focused with a lot of life energy, because we learned how to engage very large amounts of life energy and send them to the recipient. But we can't keep that up for 24 hours a day, every day. We can only do it for just so long. And that's a really big burst for the recipient. And we are sending healing energies and healing information and information about a person's perfect blueprint, which always exists in the world. And it exists in this in-between space, in the subspace, the yoni space, the goddess space. This is the potential of everything, absolutely everything. The blueprints, the patterns, the possibilities, those things exist in this subspace. And we tap into them in the same way that we are tapping in to the recipient. All we have to do is ask and reach for it. And that's part of the training for both the energy healings and the radionics, the red door healing work. We're trained to have this kind of focus and this intent. With the energy healing, the ancients practice, this delivers the blueprint, the information that your body needs to repair itself. Because when we get really sick with something or injured in a bad way, part of our body can forget the blueprint. It can get damaged. And we get our blueprints damaged from all kinds of things, poison in our environment, from trauma and injuries, you name it. Bad food, lifetime of bad food, all kinds of things can damage that blueprint. And if it's there long enough, we have a hard time by ourselves to find that blueprint and get it re-engaged. So with the healings and the red door, we're giving that information. The whole perfect blueprint about how this body should be structured, how it should be functioning, everything. Every piece of that information is reestablished and reconnected into the system so that your body can heal itself. So this is all this process, all the transferring of these energies and the blueprints and the information, other kinds of information is exchanged as well. Sometimes information from the recipient is transferred to the person doing the healing. And it might be about that person's health, their history, how certain things got damaged. And that gives the healer some more information about what to do and how to do things correctly for this person to bring about the healing. The other element that is common to both the energy healings and the red door is interacting with other intelligences. Now, this is in the ancient traditions and primitive traditions, this is usually referred to as the spirits, entities that exist in our world that do not have a physical body like we do at this time, but they're here and they do whatever it is they're here to do. A lot of them live here. They're part of the earth and the whole ecology and collected group of entities that make up life on our planet. And many of them want to help. They want to help us. They like us. They like humans. They want to see good things happen for us. They want to see us heal and grow and evolve and develop our consciousness. So they interact with us, especially when it comes to things like healings. So when we're doing energetic healings and we're doing this red door work, we often are engaging in conversation with these spirits who give us all kinds of information about what is wrong in the body, how the body's supposed to be working, what it needs in terms of energies, things that we can do energetically right away, or maybe other kind of things that the recipient needs. Maybe they need some better food. Maybe they need some supplements, things like that. Maybe they need a little more exercise. Or maybe there's some certain things in their life they need to stop doing. So this information is given to the healer. And we pass it on. We work it into whatever it is that we are delivering to the recipient. And in the case of the red door, it would be programs that are put into the bowl, like the papers that you saw in Laura's bowl. Those carry information. There's things written down on them that have to do with the blueprint and the energies and the informations that are needed in the recipient's body. Or in the case of that bowl, how many chickens? 2,000 chickens? Or it was a lot of chickens.
Yeah, 4,000 to 12,000. A lot of chickens.
That's a lot of chickens. So that's a good example. That radionics, the red door bowl, that can broadcast to many subjects with one bowl or a single subject. And we can do the same thing with the hands-on energy healing too. We could be working on the whole flock of all those chickens, or we could be just working on one at a time. There's a lot of variability there, a lot of options. So I think it's time to start looking at the details of what this quantum energy, quantum activities of these healings are all about. So we'll start with some questions.
I have a question. Can I go first, Helmut? Well, first of all, I want to say, you know, I love this. This gets me really excited. But when I first had started these studies, I literally got my bowl and it sat there for almost 3 months because it was almost science has never been my thing. My parents will tell you we had parent-teacher conferences over science not being my thing, and I was in talented and gifted programs, so they were a little shocked at the grades that came out of science. For some reason, big words like hit my brain and bounce out, you know. But in pictures and that kind of stuff, what I learned about Kay's approach and her training to this, it's almost like I compare a lot of the radionics work to making soup. Is so, you know, and even soup off recipe or with recipe, depending on who you are, it's almost like you have this bowl, you know, and it that does mind-blowing stuff. You know, it's crazy amount of stuff. But I mean, my question is, I mean, one of the last few things you had mentioned is returning your blueprint, you know, and that seems like a very complex thing. Like, would somebody have to know what their blueprint looked like to correct and bring their original blueprint back?
Excellent question. No, you don't. You don't have to know anything about what it might look like or what it might contain. You just are connecting to the person's body and their spirit and to this sacred subspace that has all this information. All the blueprints are there. And all we have to do is turn our own attention there and ask. Reach out and ask. And the blueprint is given to you, and you're told how to install it into the body. Now, this is, it's more detailed and explicit in that way with the hands-on energy ancient healing, but it works exactly the same with the bowl, with the red door.
With the bowl, it's like this. Boop. It's like, okay, this is the person's blueprint. Boop. That's why I don't know. I don't know if soup's the right analogy, but to me, you know, it's just like a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper.
Yeah, it's like that. Say that you're working on someone with a radionics bowl, the red door bowl, and their liver. You're working on their liver. It's like really bad shape, and it's causing problems all over the body. It's compounding everything else that's wrong and going wrong all over the body. So with the red door, one of the very first things that you would probably be wanting to put in there, because you always ask permission. Is this correct? Is this the right thing to be putting in there? Do they need this? Do I have permission to put this in the bowl and broadcast it to them. And that happens in the protocol steps for the ancient energy healing as well. There's always permission happening all the time. One of these things, the first thing that you'd be thinking is, how about the body section of information that's in the manual? This is the manual here behind me. There's a lot of anatomy in there, lots of frequencies and what we call rates and programs and stuff for everything. So you'd look up the liver, and you'd probably want the entire liver to go into the bowl, because that would deliver the entire blueprint of the liver. And just because of that first observation of your recipient, that their liver is in serious trouble, if you look real close, you're going to be able to tell. You'll get affirmation that it is really bad. It needs lots of things. It needs a new blueprint, needs lots and lots and lots and lots of energy. And it needs all kinds of other help with other body parts and things too. But that program printed out on paper is, you would drop it right in the bowl with their witness, the thing that identifies them. And what we use commonly for a witness is a photograph, a digital photograph. We used to use these old Polaroid camera photographs because they capture a lot of the energy field with the rest of the physical attributes. But when they started changing to other kinds of cameras and technologies, it's really hard to find those Polaroid cameras, especially hard to find the film for them. They're now starting to make some more of them again, but we found out that the digital ones, like in your phone, you can take that picture, you can print it out in your printer, and it works just as well. It is managing to capture a lot of levels of information of the recipient, physical and subtle. So that's nice. That's very convenient. Another thing that we usually put in with it is a signature. If you're working with a human, a signature. The other things that work are things like a piece of their hair, or for an animal, fur, feather. Other little bits of their body parts, they work too. Things like blood will work, but it doesn't last long. It decays. So those are things that help identify who and what the recipient is. If you're working with a farm, you might want a piece of the soil, you might want a photograph of the whole farm, you might want an aerial photograph or a map, and you can get it with Google, those Google pictures from the satellites. You can get a whole farm. It used to be quite an effort to get an aerial picture of your farm. But the blueprint itself is extremely subtle, and it's energetic. For those who are in, following a spiritual tradition and learning a lot of the details, sometimes advanced details, this blueprint would be described as being contained within the Akashic field of the recipient. So that's the kind of subtlety that we work with. And that's the kind of energetic level of existence that the quantum physics is actually covering. They haven't They haven't really opened their eyes to the whole thing yet, but they're getting results that are coming from those levels. But in quantum physics, when you go look at the definitions, there's a bunch of different definitions. And the definitions that fit for what we do are the things that are energetic, all the energetics, all the subtleties, thought, and the fields of energies that thought creates, and emotions. It's all about the smallest of the physical things that we know of, which are subatomic particles and subatomic particles, and the fields of things, like the fields that are created within an atom, or these subatomic particles, or around them, fields of electromagnetic activities, magnetic fields, electrical fields, gravity fields. That's the world of quantum. And thought is a really big part of it. Thought, consciousness, human focusing of the consciousness. And that does include using your consciousness with focus and purpose and clarity, being more awake, as we would say. But it also ends up including the asleep consciousness, the part of our subconscious, our unconscious mind, that has collected up all these blind beliefs and all the programming that we learned from our culture, and these beliefs that create a whole reality around us that we believe in and we think are real, but they're inaccurate. They're not real. When we are holding on to all that stuff and living and thinking as though all of that's real, then every thought and emotion we have that we're sending out is colored by that. It's framed by it. It's changed according to what all those beliefs are and what all the programming is. That's it's part of what they're discovering with a lot of these scientific experiments, that this stuff, this subtle and not held on a conscious level stuff, the beliefs, the feelings, and the old junk, all unresolved issues, fear, anger, all that stuff that gets piled up and never resolved from an awful lot of people in our culture, it's controlling the experiments. It ruins their experiments. So when we're studying and working with things like the Red Door Bowl or the ancient energy healing, we have to come face to face with this. This is quantum effects, really big and in our face, because we think we're trying to help fix maybe this liver. And if we have all this stuff in us that's unresolved, and all these beliefs, anger, maybe we had an alcoholic parent that maybe they died of their alcoholism and we never faced it. It's not resolved. So we're looking at this sick liver and we make instant judgments, of how this person must have done the wrong things in their life and bad things, and maybe they're alcoholics and they brought all this on themselves. And so if you're carrying all of that, even if it doesn't come to a real conscious level, that could be part of what you're sending out. And we don't want that. So we have to learn how to face these things and work with them and let them go. Clean ourselves up. This is what we call in Katasi waking up. This is working on waking up, cleaning all that old energetic stuff out. And the radionics teaches you. The red door work teaches you. And sometimes you can feel it and you can see it happening while you're working, or you see it in your results. Something doesn't get fixed the way you were hoping. And it's just a big mirror shoved into your face, and you get to really see what is going on all these subtle levels and these subatomic levels. The quantum effects, quantum levels of things.
You had said to all of us students way back in the very beginning that magic was just science. We didn't know yet.
Yes.
And that's honestly through both ancient practices and through the red door practices. You know, it looks like magic. I mean, there's, especially since the science is so new. But the whole idea, and that's probably another rabbit hole that maybe it's term for helmets, but it's like, and I think we have 2 more lectures that actually probably address thought, the magic and the power and the possible and the potential of both, using both practices, you know, coming down to thought. I'm not sure, are those in the next 2?
Well, the next one is about what makes the red door and the energy healing work so effective.
Well, there we go.
So a lot of that, I'm sure Kay will be talking about.
All right, then I won't go down that rabbit hole.
Next
And
one.
I will hold back any more questions right now so other people get their answer. And I love it. I mean, all of it. It's just...
Thought is so central to quantum effects, and it's completely central to the ancient healing and the red door healing. But like I was just saying, there's thought and then there's thought.
Yes. Did you want to take, Helmut, did you have questions, or should we take some audience questions?
Well, I have some notes, I have some questions, but I live with Kay, so I can.
Oh.
I ask her questions all the time.
Would our audience like to see any of those questions?
If you guys have questions, if the listeners, if you guys have questions, put them in the Q&A. We take some of those. If there's still time, we can go over a couple of what I have jotted down here. But let's take some from what's in there. There isn't much yet. One is about the chickens. With all the chickens, for an example, do you put in all the feathers picture, or do you put in the area, place, or what?
What have you put in, Laura?
I put in, so what I found with the witness package is the more specific you can get. Like if I grabbed and plucked a feather off of every 1,000 chicken, it would work better. It'd be more precise, but because I'm not going to. We have numbers that identify the chickens, flock numbers, from the point that they are actually an egg. They go through the whole process of, we buy the eggs and hatch them because we're organic farms. There's a process, and so the hatchery to market, we track this number, a flock number. So I use that flock number in addition to, I have a picture of the barn. So what I say is, chickens in this barn that belong to Ketty Farms. And then I have a photograph of examples of what chickens in our barn might look like. And so I give it as much photographic and written detail within the witness package to find it. And so every time a flock goes or comes, I typically will rotate out that number. Sometimes I've forgotten, and I can tell. I try to keep it as simple as possible without it still keeping it working. And so far it has. But I also have a very strong, as Kay said, thought when I'm writing up the witness package of what it means. Is one of the things I've learned is when you're writing out content of who's in there and what's in there, keeping that vision and that thought as you're writing, just puts more oomph and direction. I've just found the more direction you can give them, great, but you got to do what you got to do. If all you have is a name, go with that. Am I doing right, Kay?
That is perfect. Thank you. That's excellent. Yeah. There's 4,000 subjects in a barn.
Currently 8,000.
I mean, there are people who have used this for much larger farms, for animals, for crops, and everything in between, all the way down to your private veggie garden in the backyard and your 2 chickens that you have for laying eggs and stuff like that. It works all the way from one size to the other, and this focusing, the intent and the focusing and the clarity, they make all the difference. And I have worked on a lot of people where I just had a name. I've even had one where it was just the first name and so-and-so's friend in, Germany, living in Berlin. So you end up with this energetic tie that is working way outside of time space, that ties you to your mutual friend, and the friend to the recipient, and then now you to the recipient, and you just track them through. I don't know what to call it. You're tracking them through the through this yoni subspace, and through space-time, and through thought forms and knowledge of the people and their relationships, their connection, the cords that connect people together because they've been in relationship. You're following all of that and using all of that. And it worked great. Everything I did worked really great.
Okay, Holly is asking about permission. Who or where does the permission to do the healing come from?
For both the energetic healing and the red door, there's a series of permissions. And it starts with, if you have the chance, because you don't always, but mostly you do, excuse me. Say you're working on people, humans, then you would want a verbal or written interaction permission. And it could come by way of another person if it has to, but it needs to be conscious, physical, an obvious permission. But then before we start on the work, one of the very first things that we do as the process is beginning, whether it's the energetic ancient healing or it's red door healing, we're asking energetically, do we have permission from this person, that's subject, to be doing this healing work? We usually get a yes, but every now and again, you get a no. And that could be for all kinds of different reasons. And we just have to accept it and possibly stop at that point. We could ask another question, like, okay, I understand, I accept that I can't do a regular big full healing on this person. Do I have permission to just give love or peace? Sometimes you'll get a yes at that point. Sometimes you still get a no. And you just have to leave it right there. But we always ask permission. And every time that we make another step along the way in the middle of the healing, in the middle of setting the red door up with all of its little pieces of ingredients in there, we're asking permission about every one. Do I have permission to put this in? Is this okay? Is this going to be effective for this person? Is this a good thing to be giving them? Can they tolerate this? Is this compatible with them? All kinds of permission questions, details. And especially if you're putting information in that has to do with something like herbs or a supplement, you really need to ask a lot of questions to make sure that their body actually needs it, wants it, will use it, that it's not going to cause any unwanted side effects, or they have an allergy to it. We ask allergy questions about things like that. So lots of different avenues of permission. Good question.
Okay, there's a question from Jennifer. I'm going to paste it in the chat for you, Kay, so you can see it, because there is some writing nuances to it. And the question is, can you say more about there is thought, as in lowercase thought, first letter lowercase, and then there is thought, uppercase thought. Did you see that?
Yes, I do see it.
Okay.
Okay. What I was talking about was the kind of thought that the average person in our culture has is very unconscious. We're not really paying much attention to it. We're not in control of it. Our programming, our masks are in control of these thoughts and just let them fly everywhere with all kinds of different energies, nuances in them, judgments and fears and anger and all kinds of stuff that we would call masky. Lots of programming from blind beliefs that stage the thought, create the thought in a particular way that reflects that blind belief. That is what we would call a sleep thought. The person's asleep, spiritually, consciously asleep. The other kind of thought is when we allow ourselves to break out of that box that imprisons us with all this unconscious kind of thoughts and all the old programming shoved into it and shaping it. When we get out of that, we have a clarity. We have this chance at that point to really utilize our choice. We have choice about what we want to think at any given moment. And we have choice about what we want to feel the emotions that we want to feel at any given moment. We have choice about what we want to focus all these thoughts and the emotions on at any given moment. And when we utilize that, we practice that, Katasi refers to that as being awake. We're learning how to be awake, and we're using that purposefully. So in healing and in the red door, this property of being awake and being able to consciously, purposefully focus your attention on what it is you want and keep it there without being distracted, without having these thoughts bubble up all the time about this or that problem, and you're angry at somebody, you're judging this over here, without all that interruption. Just to have the freedom and the peace and the clarity to focus your mind and hold it and stay there and do something like do this healing work with the red door or the energy healing from beginning to end, very consciously, very purposefully, very clean. That's the difference between the two, and I hope that helps. Hope that makes sense.
I actually had some notes about that when you were talking about creating scale away with your thought. I got a nosebleed, so I need to attend to that. That we're doing that all the time. And one of the reasons we are in such a mess in our world today is because that's manifesting. We manifest all the time. We're just not aware of it. We're just not consciously aware of where our thoughts are, where our emotions are, and we throw it around all the time. That's what spiritual teachings are about, to become aware of that and to learn to focus your attention where you want it. And that's a big element in the healings as well.
Good point.
So I'm going to have you take over here for a few minutes, Laura.
Got it. So are you ready for another question, Kay?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Holly asks, can you work on dissolving mask programming using the Red Bull?
Yes, you can. There's a lot of programs that help with that. They're all about that. And just the work with the red door, learning how to do the process and then working with it, doing it on all kinds of different subjects, and then continuing learning from it. It helps teach you how to focus like that. It helps a great deal. So does the ancient energy healing. It helps in the same way. It helps to teach you how to focus on these things and stay focused and keep all the other stuff out. And it teaches you, both of them teach you very early on about the difference between being able to be really focused and really clear and staying there uninterrupted versus the asleep mind that is very scattered, bouncing all over the place with all these interruptions and all the different thoughts and feelings about all this programming that we learned, the social programming, and our past experiences in our life that are unresolved and they're just still gnarling at us. We learn to see it very easily and very quickly while just doing this work, learning how to do this work and doing it. So those are two different aspects of getting these special spiritual teachings. And the bowl is pretty effective at helping. It can't do all of it for people, though. It can't do it can't show you everything about all the junk you're carrying with you and the old habits that you have, the mental, emotional, focusing habits. It'll help teach you about them. It can help loosen it for you, help you unplug them, can give you a lot of help with that, but you still are the one that is responsible for it and you're the one that has to do that stuff yourself.
Don't get out of the work completely.
You can't. It'll help. It helps a lot. Yeah.
Rebecca asks, why is it called Red Door Healing, and why, quotes, Red Bull?
The name Red Door came because it is a door. The scalar wave is a door. It's a door into another world, another dimension, to this outside of time and space, sacred yoni's subspace.
What's the long name for it, Kay? Something dimensional.
Oh, I have to read it. I can't remember.
Yeah, it's I like Red Door better.
Dimensional entry transmission field
Oh,
generator.
he's back.
Did you have to read it too?
No.
Oh.
I have always remembered that.
Red Door's easier.
It describes what it is, but the scalar wave is a door. It's a doorway into this whole other aspect of the universe that we, in our modern culture, don't pay any attention to and don't even know exists. And in Katasi, we often refer to it as the non-linear. It's the outside of time and space, everything that is not governed by time and space. That's referred to as non-linear. So that's everything in the universe. It connects you to absolutely anything in the whole universe. So that's a nice door. It's a big door. It's red because the bowls are red. And the bowls are red because the red frequency, especially it's sort of like the fire engine red, kind of red. It has this ability to be able to block a lot of the subtle energy waves. So while I was designing the door and working with it and figuring out the different colors really affected it differently. They affected the whole flow, the efficiency of the refraction of the energies inside of the bowl, which means the intensity and clarity of the scalar wave that gets formed inside. Red makes it work better. So they're all painted red, and we've had to do a lot of experimenting with the exact kind of color of red and the kind of material that's making the color. The wood stain, wood paint, tried all sorts of different things of ways to make the color where it doesn't interfere with other aspects of the red door and its ability to work. When we used materials that were really heavily poisonous materials to create that color, the bowl wouldn't work. No scalar wave. And if we use something that was too thick, like a lot of paints are really, really thick and they can change your dimensions, then it's ruined the efficiency. So that's why it's red. Yeah, red door, red bowl. Red bowl is kind of a nickname because the device is a bowl. It's the shape of a bowl. It's a cylinder. So it's a red bowl.
I hope that answered that question. I like
I
it.
hope so.
I like it a lot easier than I can't even say the other one. But adore, definitely adore is a good description. Jennifer asks, will you talk about working on people we are attached to, invested in their well-being?
Mm. Yeah, inevitably, you're going to be working on yourself, and you're going to be working on your loved ones, people who are close to you, your best friends. Those are the ones that usually need it the most, and then they're right there in your life. And when we find something really big and nasty, everybody thinks of, something like that. The first thought you have is cancer, or heart disease, Alzheimer's, these horrific modern diseases. We're trained in both the ancient energy healing and the red door work to try to be as detached as we can. Not that we aren't, feeling what's going on with them, or that we don't care, but we have to be detached enough in a way that we can focus without bias. Because if you're testing away with your red door to try to find out what is wrong with this person, where are they sick and what are they sick with, there's a lot of protocol for that and all kinds of lists that are created that we go through to find out, to narrow it down. What do we have? What's the goods there? And when we come across some of this bad stuff, it can get us very worried and very upset. It can feel very hurtful inside. And that, if we let ourselves go there while we're trying to work, it'll change the results that we're getting. We won't get true results with our tests. I hope that is understandable and makes sense to people. It's a great question.
It is. I think that goes with last time's question. I think Jennifer might have asked, kind of where things can go wrong, blind beliefs and being too attached to the answers.
I wanted to jump in here. There's a few more questions. Do we want to keep going? Because we are already at 1:15.
Yeah, I think we can do that. I always say yes. I'm a softie.
Yeah. I'm always going to let you say yes.
Oh God, I'm outvoted. Again.
I might slip away for a bathroom break, but that'll be the excitement.
Oh God. Okay.
Do you want me to ask the next question?
Sure.
Let's see. I believe this is Annikins is the name. At what point in your studies, Kay, were you drawn to learning how quantum physics factors into the healing work? Or was it more or less just handed to you? And if so, how so? Ooh. That's it.
Well, quantum physics wasn't really out into the public when I started. The Egyptian teacher, one of her students was an avid radionics person and taught lots of people, had classes. So she took one of her classes and learned radionics and bought the electrical machine. And so that was my very first exposure to this kind of device and processes. So I took the class too, and started learning about working with these devices. But at the same time, I'm learning about the ancient healing. I had studied the Hedekas, Peruvian. I was studying the Egyptian, which is so similar, it's spooky, and practicing those. At that time, nobody had private computers. Very, very few people, only specialist folks had a private computer. So we didn't have anything like the internet. We just had the books that were available. There was not much available in quantum physics. And I wasn't really drawn to it because I didn't know anything about it or what it was or why is it different than regular physics. But once those things started to become more available, I remember learning about what quantum physics was, what the field is about. It's about the minutest physical particles and the fields, the energy fields that they either create or have something to do with, all these different kinds of energies, and how thought was interrupting them. And one little thing is connecting to another one, and click, 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 click. And I remembered when I was in my teens, my brother's a scientist, and he's much older. He's 11 years older. So he was working at Stanford, and he was helping to build the first one of those great big machines that are round and the energy go. I'm not remembering the name of it again.
Collider.
The collider. He was working on the first collider at Stanford University. And he came home. He always would come home with these really interesting, fabulous, and often very funny stories about his life and his work. And he was so excited about this because he didn't know what to make of it. Nobody knew what to make of it. They were doing these experiments and they were going all crazy haywire, and they couldn't figure out why. And then they started to realize why. It's because of the people that were nearby. And their thoughts, their feelings, their beliefs were changing the effects. The first time I ever heard of that was I was a teenager. And he was working on the collider at Stanford. And I've always thought that was a really great piece of information and a great story. Didn't know what to make of it. But then when I started to hear about quantum physics, and I've been doing all this healing, I've been doing the radionic studies, and I'm thinking, this is starting to sound a lot alike. There's all these things that are so much alike about them. There's got to be something there. And so I started to delve into it more. Nowadays, with the internet, there's so much more information on the internet, and people like scientists and doctors putting their studies on the internet right away. We get access to all kinds of stuff that was impossible when I was first studying this way back when. So it kind of came together piece by piece. And I think the story with my brother and the confusion of the scientists, the tests going wrong because of the closeness of the people. First, they didn't know it was thought. They knew people were close. And when people weren't close, it didn't happen. So they didn't know if it was just, physical energy presence. It took them a while to put their pieces together and figure out what it was.
That's so cool. Hey, yeah. I won't say anything, Helmut. I'll answer other people's questions. You ready for another? I'm like, rabbit hole.
I'm impressed, Laura.
I know, I'm so intrigued right now. I know, but Rebecca, the next question, really wants her question answered, I'm sure. When working with energy, I see energy from the earth or the ocean and have asked it to help. Is that different from scalar energy, or is it all the same thing?
Depends.
Does that make sense? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it could be a number of different kinds of energy that's coming off the earth and coming off the ocean. It could be the energy of the aliveness, the spirit of that land or the water. And those energies and those intelligences that are the land or the soil or the water, they operate in scalar fashion. They can also operate in 3D time space. So some of what they do is 3D time space, cause effect, and the rest of it is outside of time and space, and that has to do with scalar energies. And that great outside of time and space, non-linear yoni subspace.
That's cool. Because life energy has scalar waves. Is that correct, or would you say it that way? I'm sorry, Helmut, I had to.
Good question. It creates scalar waves.
Oh, okay. We'll let Annika ask a question, so I'll make sure we get to hers. Could I, if I have no physical bowl, intend one bowl? This is interesting. Let me start this over. Could I, if I have no physical bowl, intend one bowl in a dream state? Could I then use it just like an energetic bowl, which I intend to work on like a physical? I think she means bowl. I believe this would work just about attention focus and creating energetic bowl, which works also. Does that make
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great question. Yes, you could. Yep. You need to have been around a bowl. You need to have felt it. You need the signature of the bowl, so that you can tie into a physical bowl or just create that effect energetically, create an energetic bowl. Yeah, but that can work, and I have done that.
But then
I have also manipulated my existing bowls with a program in it, realizing, maybe I'm in town, I'm not anywhere near the bowls, and somebody needs a new piece of information in their bowl or something taken out, and I can't get there to do it. I do it energetically. I do it with my thoughts.
I did that recently by mistake, but it worked. My best learnings are mistakes, but it's cool. I don't know that I depend on it greatly, but my thoughts aren't strong enough yet, but it did work that time. That's cool.
When you do that, when you dream a bowl, that depends on your focusing ability again, and how long you can hold that. If you stop, the bowl disappears, right?
Well, you can intend it to continue its existence, even though you're not focused any longer on it. And that's like when I had to take something out of the bowl that shouldn't be in the bowl anymore for this person, because maybe I found out, with an email while I was en route. And I needed to stop the broadcasting of a particular program that was in the bowl. So in my mind, I picked it up. I told it to, no longer broadcast, and I set it down on the shelf next to the bowl, and told that to just be that way, stay that way, keep working that way, even though I'm not focused. Good point, Helmut.
Well, I'm just imagining the way the work we have done, the rates we put in a bowl, the intentions and the things we put in there, and just leave them in there and do the work. And if you try to hold all this with your focus and then set it, yes, you can do that. But is it going to continue with the same intensity, with the same dynamic? Are you going to have the clarity to not mix anything in there that shouldn't be there? It's like,
well,
that's very complex.
That's a good question. You might have other thoughts or intentions on kind of a subconscious level, or that might just sort of pop into your mind while you're doing that work in the dream state. And yeah, then it wouldn't be as pure as you were hoping or intending.
And the sheer enormity of rate combination that's being put in, it's like, oh my God, just thinking about holding that and putting it together
that's a lot.
Daunting.
Yeah. Well, take a look at this. You're not even seeing the whole thing. It goes more off in this direction. Over here, this is the latest version of the manual. There's somewhere around 1,500 pages, but I've been working on lots and lots and lots of programs since then that I use, plus the manual. These new programs aren't in the manual yet. It will be updated and made public, but it isn't yet. So there's a lot of possibilities of programs to use, and any one of them is a complex of different frequencies and what we call rates, concepts. We use words as what we call a rate, to broadcast the meaning of the words. We use that as well as these different number patterns. That's a lot to hold in your mind.
I'm just thinking of the diabetes program you have created.
75 pages.
We have an older version. There's two halves.
That one program alone has what? You up to 200 pages right now, right?
There's two halves to the diabetes program.
Oh, yeah.
And they're about 100 pages each.
Yeah, the binders behind, well, sorry, Boo stepped in. But the binders, that's the Red Door. Well, some of it's my energy healing studies, but none of those existed before Kay entered my life. And I've got some on the other side of the closet too. It's just the information. I personally, my brain's not trained that way. The pictures and other things are developing where, I can package things and hold it, but not down to the complexity that, 100 pages that you can just, some of these programs, because I don't know if you want to get into the fact that they can read CDs too, but because there's so many pages, they don't fit in the bowl. We put you can download the information to a CD and put a CD in the bowl instead.
We're getting late.
I know, we're getting. It's
There's
probably
one more question in the chat, actually. I want to get to that, and then we are 90 minutes in, so I think we should think about closing out.
I don't see the question, so I'll let
yeah,
you.
that's somebody put Laura put it in the chat. Clearly, you can work with a large number of targets. Those targets have to receive the same type of healing, like the liver. So yeah, that's
Yes.
Mhm. Yeah, when you have more than one target subject, like a barn full of chickens, they're all going to get the same program. Whatever you put in there as programs for healing, they all get the same thing. They all receive exactly the same thing. So whether it's just liver for all the chickens or other kinds of healing, well-being problems they may be having that day, they're all receiving the same program. And that would be the same if you had two humans in one bowl. It works. You can do it, but it has to be the exact same program.
Okay. Annika has another question. Do I need to do a radionics course to work with that manual? She works with a tensor. It's like a pendulum, but different with her clients, and that works really well. But I miss a manual which shows me a way of structured questioning.
It would be a challenge to try to work with the manual without the basic class information to give you the basic how-to of using the pendulum and the red bowl, and also how to use the manual, how to understand what it's saying.
Okay. Laura, any burning questions?
I feel fortunate. There's 2 more webinars after this. I'm sure I can weave them in then. And I'm sure everybody like me needs to probably use the restroom by now. So
I have a quick question. Void, subspace, akasha. What's the relationship?
Excellent. Void and subspace, from our point of view, are the same thing. These words are thrown around by different groups, different scientists, different avenues of science. They use the same words, but they're meaning different things. So you need to make sure your definitions are correct, or you've got the definition you want to be talking about. And akasha, subspace and the void, this is before manifestation. This is it's like the egg. In Egyptian thought, this is Isis Oset, Black Isis. This is the egg that births all things. So it's holding the potential and all blueprints like an egg would be holding. Everything is birthed out of that void, out of the subspace, including akasha. Akasha is the very first element, and it holds all the blueprints. So we have all this physical matter that is being created in 3D time space, coming out of subspace all the time. And there's certain scientists that have talked about this, that they felt like they discovered it or had something in their experiments that pointed to this or proved it, that we have subatomic particles, we have atoms, we have molecules that are literally popped into existence out of the subspace. The akasha is the very first thing to kind of erupt out of subspace, and it's collecting all the things that it needs, all the other elements, to make it physical. And it's practically instantaneous as it pops from what is the void into 3D time space. So one of the things that we are doing when we're doing energy healings, and what we're working with the red door, and we're asking certain things to become inside this target, inside this person we're working on. They are appearing, literally, they are just appearing out of sort of nowhere. Like when we replace a blueprint, or we need to grow new tissue. Maybe they have a broken bone and you want to get bone glue, natural bone glue between the two pieces, and you want to grow the bone back the way it's supposed to be and fast. Well, you need lots of physical material. You need lots of the right atoms to be able to do that, the right molecules. And they can literally be manifested from the void, from the subspace. They pop into existence. The very first spark of that is the existence of Akasha with a blueprint that tells the world, tells this, whatever this is, what to be and how to be it, and the timing of it, because it's now in 3D time space. So Akasha is not exactly the same thing as the void.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you both. Couple of housekeeping things. Go to the address for all of this information, and where this video is also going to show up. The recording is katarsereddoor.com. And also the information about the class that is coming up will appear there too pretty soon. So keep that address in mind. You guys have all signed up for this webinar series there anyways, so you have it. But for people watching this recording that have not been in the live sessions, that's the address. katarsereddoor.com. That's KATASEE. Nope, I forgot it. KATASEEREDDOOR.com. I got it. So that's the website. The next webinar next week, Tuesday in a week, is called "What Makes Katarse Red Door and the Ancient Healing Arts So Effective." So this is another very exciting webinar that's coming up. And the description is we will talk about how clarity of focus and concentration of the practitioner's mind is so important, and how making that effect occur is, and how making that effect occur is dependent on that focusing ability and the amount of life energy the practitioner has and can wield. With the red door work, the practitioner also utilizes the aspects of the geometry of the red door instrument and the quantum nature of the universe. So, any thoughts, Kay?
Well, that's a mouthful, and I think it kind of speaks for itself.
So, you will get the link to all of this again. To join the next webinar next Tuesday, February 12th, again at 12 noon Mountain Standard Time. Laura.
And I was about to say, there was a question that came up if they needed to study radionics to do this work. And just real quickly, this incorporates radionics, but you don't need to study radionics.
The red door and the use of the red door, the protocols and everything that I designed through the years started out, it was based on both ancient healing and radionics as it existed back then. And so there is this element, the radionic element of what the red door is and how it's used, but it's become something so much more and fundamentally a bit different because it's tied so much with the ancient healing. I've taken a lot of what the ancient healing is and all the protocols and steps, the things it can do, and have done my best to duplicate most of it so far into the red door and using the red door. So it's a meld.
Yeah. So you don't need to, if somebody has radionics background, they'd enjoy this, but you can start here. I did.
If you have radionics teaching from the electrical machines, the teachers that do that, teaching people how to use that, and their existing manuals, you'll certainly understand a lot of it immediately. It'll make more sense to you, but you will need some specific training for using the red door in this manual because it is significantly different.
Easier in my mind, but that's that's me.
I've seen some of the latest machines. They're so complex now. When I started, there were 2 dials. There was one well hole. It was electrical. You plugged it in. And now there's like 6, 8, 10 dials, a number of different well holes to put things in, and another set to do another whole kind of thing with other dials.
No USB cord. There's no programming. My boop.
The one thing about the electrical devices, the old one, you could only utilize one rate at a time. And then they built one that you could use 2 rates at a time.
I'm just laughing at what's in my
Yeah, I know, it seems a little funny.
I have thousands.
And now the latest ones, you could use 6, 8, 10, as many wells as you have. That's how many rates that you could put in all at once. With the red door, you have an endless number of rates that you could use all together at one time. And they work synergistically together. The rates create a complex of their own, a synergy of their own, as we don't really have a word to describe it. All the rates, say you have liver again, you got the program for the whole liver. That's a lot of pages with a lot of rates on each page. You can't put that whole thing in the electrical devices and send it. You have to do it piece by piece by piece, one after the other. With the red door, you can put that whole package in that represents all the different parts and pieces and operations of the liver all at once and broadcast it all at once. So you're getting the same effect, the same intensity of having each rate broadcast one at a time, singly, like the electrical machines, but you have this complex of it working together, which includes the entirety, the whole blueprint of the liver. And you get it all at once. And when you think about it, when your liver's sick, there's something wrong with your liver or anything else. Having to try to correct it and heal it one little part of the liver at a time, it is very time consuming, and it doesn't pull together in a single harmony. When you can put the whole liver package in with all the rates about liver all at once, you get this working together. It's a very holistic working together synergy that happens. And with my experience with the electrical machines, I never accomplished that, because you can only do these few rates at a time.
That's beautiful. This is one of the main reasons why you started to create the bowl.
Yeah. When I was working with the electrical machine, it just was not effective enough. It wasn't efficient enough, and you couldn't address this entirety of an organ or some other kind of system all together all at once in this holistic manner. There are rates that say liver, and they mean the whole liver. And same with all the other body parts. It works to address the whole liver to a degree. It's no way compares to being able to put the entire section of the liver with all of the different words and all the different rates and all that complexity all together at once. There's no comparison between the two. That one single rate versus the whole section.
Okay. Thank you. We're closing out for the day. There was a hand raise, but we can't get to that. And with hand raising, we run into the problem that people show up on the video and we have to deal with permission and stuff, because we're going to share this video widely. So any questions that you still have? Next week, same time, same station. Thank you so much for joining, everybody. Thank you, Laura. Thank you so much, Kay.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Dave.
Laura.
Thanks, Helmut.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Helmut. Thank you, everybody for
Yes.
coming and watching, and I hope you enjoy it and you come back, listen to more.
We see you again next week. Okay, love you.
Love you. Love you
Bye-bye.
all. Bye-bye.